Welcome to Building Agentic Systems with Protocols. Model Context Protocol and Agent-to-Agent Protocol. What we want to do today is we want to make the most out of our short time together. We want to align ourselves to really kind of understanding exactly what MCP is, what it isn't, and we want to build, ship, and share our very own MCP server. We also want to, given that context, shed some light onto what agent-to-agent protocol is doing, how it's distinctly different from MCP, is it? And how to think about using one or more of these protocols moving forward. This is an emerging space. We're going to try to outline the key aspects. And one of the things before we get into it today, everybody, is we're going to treat this just like we would a real class of the AI engineering bootcamp. And so if you have questions along the way, we've got staff ready at hand in the Zoom chat, ready to answer any and all technical questions. So please throw them at us. We'll be sure to get eyes on them. Okay, let's get into it today. There's a couple key things we want you to be able to take away from this session and some trailheads to continue to learn more and more. So MCP, everybody's talking about it. Nobody really seems to do a very good job talking about it. It's quite difficult to understand for the vast majority of us, myself included, and certainly many of the folks in our community and the people who take our courses. Here's the too long don't read on MCP. We should use MCP when we're building tools for agents, not humans. We might just say, actually, when we're building tools for MCP clients, something like Claude Code, for instance, is that an agent? Arguable. In fact, what is an agent? One of the many YouTube live streams that we've done, that we do every single week at AI Makerspace on YouTube, was entitled exactly this, in the light of Harrison Chase from LangGraph and LangChain coming out and kind of trying to establish this idea of what an agent really is. A coding agent, an autonomous software engineer, is it just actually a loop? There's all sorts of great memes out there. We have our own specific definition. We encourage you to check out some of our more deeper discussions on the idea of agents, but simply we can think of an agent as a system that can leverage or emulate reasoning to make dynamic decisions in an application flow. Typically, it's going to decide to pick up a tool or one or two or more tools, and that could be part of its flow. So when we're building tools for these agents, for these MCP clients, again, things like Claude Code, these places where data lives, these are the kind of things we're talking about building MCP servers for. This is from the original press release by Anthropic. Still in TLDR land, let's think about this for a second as the top line of what we often hear. MCP is an open protocol that standardizes how applications provide context critically to LLMs. One of the things we often see in this industry is when we're talking about agents, we're typically just talking about an LLM. It probably makes a little bit more sense here to think about providing context to agents. Okay, the other thing we always hear is it's the USB-C for AI, basically. But we want to consider what it was like when the first USB port came out. It wasn't that it was everywhere and you could plug them into all the Macs. In fact, it was almost nowhere and it wasn't clear where to use it. That's where we are today, although it's like everything else in AI, rapidly increasing in its adoption, in its progression, in its development. Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper into this press release and spec. new standard for connecting systems to AI assistants. It's all about getting the right context. And this is the marketing stuff. Same as to produce frontier model, better, more relevant responses. Same thing as RAG, same thing as using agents and giving them access to tools. Every new data source requires its own custom implementation. This was the line from November 2024. Is that true? Is that true today? This is an interesting question. We'll discuss this a little bit more during the discussion portion. The spec, I mean, it's full of this jargon and marketing stuff. Whether you're building an AI-powered IDE, enhancing a chat interface, or creating custom AI workflows, MCP provides a standardized way for you to connect LLMs to the context they need. Why MCP helps you build agents and complex workflows, a growing list of pre-built integrate. Okay, so all of this stuff. But there's some important pieces of information we can extract from this. And we think about leveraging and using these tools as engineers and as builders. At its core, MCP follows a client-server architecture, where a host application connects to multiple servers, client-server. So we can sort of break this down word by word. Protocol just means set of rules or standardized procedure. A client is just something that requests information or services from a server. A server is just something that provides services and data to a client or clients. So basically, clients consume what servers serve. Clients consume what servers serve. What's interesting here, you will not generally be using MCP as a client. You will build MCP servers. It's your agents, it's your MCP clients that will use MCP as a client. And this kind of gives us some insight right away into what agent-to-agent protocol might be useful for. So MCP is going to return MCP-compatible client responses. It's going to return them from the MCP servers. Okay, fine. This is sort of like, sounds pretty standard, right? Our MCP client is going to resolve the MCP server response into something that we can put in context. Doesn't mean it has to be unstructured data. It doesn't mean it has to be text. It could be structured data. It could be actual, real kind of, I want to predict something data, not just words, like old school machine learning type stuff in a CSV even. So it's kind of like a set of rules for governing how MCP clients consume and resolve what MCP servers serve. That's kind of what it is. It's called Model Context Protocol. So we could kind of say it's a protocol for putting stuff into the model's context window. Now, importantly, it's not something that does that. It doesn't do the thing. It's the rules for doing the thing. So it doesn't put stuff in context. Our applications put stuff in context. It's the rules for putting stuff in context for ever more complex applications. You see, because all of the applications we build as AI engineers are based on the idea of putting the right stuff in context. This is sort of the meta design pattern. And whether we're talking about kind of looking at the whole stack, or we're talking about a very, very simple application, this is one that we teach a lot of folks who are just getting started how to build, called the AI Engineer Challenge. Check that out if you're interested in building your very first LLM application. Or maybe you want to build a cloud-based best practice RAG application with open source tools. Or maybe you want to build an on-prem agent application with the best tooling that you can get out in the industry today. All of this stuff is going to focus on putting the right stuff in context. And if you want to look at either of those, this is a recent event series that we also did on YouTube. Encourage you guys to check it out. So Wiz, I want to bring you up a little bit here. If we talk about model context protocol, it's just the rules for putting the right stuff in context. Is that a ridiculous way to think about it? Or is that all it is?
I mean, it's definitely not ridiculous. No, like when it comes to model context protocol, the idea is that it is just this protocol that governs the way we think about adding things into context, right? So it allows us to have some amount of standardization that we would otherwise not have access to. And this is really important. I mean, for a number of reasons, but one of those reasons is that, right, we want to be able to do this no matter our model, no matter what application we're building. We want all of these different services and LLMs and agent systems, whatever it is, as we're going to delve deeper into with A2A. But to be able to communicate with each other the same way that when we first started using the web, we needed a way to make sure that like your request was going to be understood by the server, right? And this is the same thing, but with more AI,
Mm.
basically.
Ooh, so it's even better. Okay, so Wiz, stay up here with me. There's basically two ways we can use this, right? It's a client server thing. So we could use existing MCP servers and consume what they're putting out as clients, or we could actually build MCP servers and expose our tools to others. And I think we put forth in the kind of TLDR, there's typically one way we're going to use this. Is this true? Like, will we really be working on the server side most of the time? And if so, why is that the case exactly?
I think it's true for most people that they will generally be, on the server side, especially, where we are in current times. The idea here is that we have this idea of a client that we might want, but at the end of the day, oftentimes the relationship we need is we have some number of services and we wish to expose them to others so that they can build with those services through a tool. And that's that MCP server. MCP clients are necessary once you reach a certain scale or you're using someone else's version of these tools. But a lot of the times when we're talking about clients, people are talking about things like Cursor, like Claude Desktop, like Windsurf, right? We're not often talking about it from the perspective of the agentic system, though definitely that is a major use case. It's just not, in current year, the most, let's say, popular use case.
Okay, so let me just double click in on this. You're saying that the client that's actually consuming what the server puts out is typically something like Cursor or Claude Desktop, or like it's not me as the developer directly. It's like potentially my IDE. It's like, why is that an important distinction to make here? Because I think a lot of people maybe think about, oh, I'll hit the MCP server because I need those tools. I'll just go grab them from the MCP server. I can just use them right there, right? Why is
And
that
that's
a bad
exactly
way to
it.
think about it?
We need a client to do that, and that client is typically going to be our IDE or whatever AI assisted uh, uh, you know uh, tool we're using. Again, this is not the only time. You can build your own client like LangGraph, right? You can build a node that can consume MCP tools as a client, right? Absolutely true. It's just when we're most often seeing people leverage MCP, they have some workflow they wish to go through or do, and they want to add tools to that, and that's what we're going to use our existing clients for. Again, this isn't to say it's the only way to do it. It's just to say that it's the most popular way to do it right now.
Okay, so typically, all right, we're going to leverage it on the building, the server side. Let's see how that works exactly. So, Wiz, you're going to show us today how to build our very own MCP server. And we're just going to set it up. We're going to add a tool, and then we're going to show everybody how we can actually consume, right? The good stuff that the server is putting out. And this, again, everybody, is something you can follow along with directly. So we'll go ahead and throw the link for what the code he's going to go over actually is. If you don't have kind of the prerequisite setup, I would recommend just watching. But if it's something you want to sort of challenge yourself to follow along with, have at it. So Wiz, over to you.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. And basically, this is available in a repository that we have, which is going to be our MCP event, right? The idea here is pretty straightforward. So what I would like to do is I would like to be able to roll dice in my cursor window. And this is obviously it's a toy example, right? Like we're not suggesting that this is gonna change the world, but it showcases the pattern we need to use, right, to build a MCP server. And LLMs are famously bad at RNG, right? So if you ask them to flip coins, most of the time they're going to come up heads. Different models have different levels of how biased they are, but they are all considerably biased and worse than random. So we have this dice roller.py. It's just a simple class. It asks for a notation, a number of rolls, and a dice pattern. It has a roll dice method, which is going to roll dice based on this pattern. You might be asking, what pattern are you talking about? We'll get to that in just a bit. We can roll multiple dice, of course, and then, there you go. It rolls dice. That's what it does. But I'd love my LLM to be able to access this, and I love other people to be able to access this as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to our server.py where the quote unquote magic happens, right, for this MCP server. And you'll notice right away that this is like not a ton of code, right? So our dice roller was just constructed. What we're going to do is import this dice roller. We're going to start up our fast MCP server. If you're familiar with fast API, same, but for MCP. We're also going to include Tavili, because why not also include a web search tool, which is slightly more realistic of a use case, right? And you can see that we can just build these tools by decorating these functions with this mcp.tool notation. And all it's going to do, right, is pass in some query with some type hint, and then it's going to allow us to return those results as per our setup protocol, right? So this is going to be by default standard IO, stdio, so just text, but you can use SSC, and support for HTTP is also available. But the idea is pretty straightforward, which is that we have this tool. We wish others to be able to use it, or we wish other MCP clients to be able to use it without having to like roll this into their own agent, right? We don't have to change their source code or change the way that agent's built. And so we build the tool. We do the same thing for dice rolling, exactly the same pattern. And if you wish to add your own tool, you would simply do it in the same pattern. So there's nothing really fancy, right, going on here. In fact, it's quite straightforward, right? It is very easy to spin up your own MCP server, in fact. So this is great, and we love that, but how do we actually make it useful to something like, in this case, we're gonna talk about cursor, because we're just in cursor already. So what we need to do is we need to open the command palette and go to open MCP settings, and you're gonna notice that we have the MCP server already set up. And the way we spin this thing up is with this simple config, right? So there's no trick to it. There's no additional steps. We simply provide this blob, which is contains our MCP servers, one of which is called rather unimaginatively MCP server. It has a command that it uses to run this server, and that's it. That's the whole process needed to add this server. And you might think, well, this is very simple, right? This is very straightforward. How or why is this very straightforward? That's the whole MCP protocol at work, right? That's what it is for. It is to make this simple and standardized. So instead of needing to have complex per tool configurations or per deployment configurations, right? We can have this very simple standardized pattern that we know is going to expose something that is compatible with the client that we have. That is the ability of MCP. The same thing for Fast API, right? You don't have to individually set up all your posts and gets with like extremely long configurations, right? It's just like at post, at get, right? And the reason, again, is because there's an agreed upon protocol in the back end or behind the scenes for which this work has already been done. So you'll notice that when we have the thing on, we see our three tools: web search, roll dice, and your tool name. So how do we actually use these things? Well, we can use the cursor compose to use them. We can do things like, hey, search the web for or let's say to see if Adam Lowry, who's the captain of the Winnipeg Jets, if you didn't know, did okay in his surgery, right? And we can send this query to Claude. We can see this. We can use the search, the web tool. There you go. You get the idea. We can also, though, roll some dice. And so let's say like a roll 2d20, keep the highest. And what this is going to do is allow us to look at our MCP server tool. We're going to call the MCP tool. We're going to get the roles. We're going to see this. And Claude Cursor, or not Claude Cursor, sorry, just Cursor, though it is Claude, is going to be able to parse that out. And again, this notation thing allows us to roll dice a little bit more complicatedly than you might imagine, than just like roll a d6 or roll a standard die, right? You can get kind of funky with it thanks to that notation. And all of that is handled by the LLM, which has been trained on this notation. And so we have this 2d20 roll that we can pass in, and we get a response that's much closer to random. Of course, it's still pseudo random because we're using Python.random, but it's much closer to real random than the LLM would be. And that's it, right? That's the whole thing. So building the server, really straightforward. Building the tool, pretty straightforward. Attaching it to your client, very straightforward. MCP perhaps is conceptually very dense, but the implementation details are very straightforward. There's a lot of caveats that we're kind of lightning lessoning over right now, of course, that have to do with security, have to do with the best practices for designing these as we get to like the hundreds of tools. But to get started with it, it really is this straightforward. And with that, pass you guys back to Dr. Greg for the next section of the old presentation.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Wiz. So I want to go ahead and address one key issue that keeps coming up every time we present anything about MCP. Like, I mean, dice rolling, fine. But like, what about like real use cases? Like, what are they today? And when should people actually be picking up an MCP server and getting in on some building their own MCP? Are we seeing this?
I mean, basically, there's a number of reasons, and hilariously, one of the reasons that we should think about using MCP is for things like A2A agent cards, right? So, we're about to talk about those in just a moment. But the idea is MCP is great when we want our users to be able to use our tools through something like, common MCP clients or integrate them into their agent workflows. And that's a loosey-goosey answer, but what it means is like, let's say I have a service as a company or an API as a company, right? Instead of putting the workload onto my user to build a tool for that, providing an MCP server that wraps that API, right, is going to allow them to integrate this into their agent flows a little bit better. A key use case, right, is GitHub. GitHub has an API. They've had a really robust API the whole time, right, through the GH command line tool. But agents aren't great at using it. It's not defined in a way that's really expressive to LLMs, and so MCP allows us to wrap that in order for everybody to integrate their agents with this tool really cleanly and in a way that is much more likely to have success than just like asking the LLM to just guess at the CLI tool. I mean, the reason we are excited about MCP at AI Makerspace is that we do a boot camp where we're trying to teach people tools, and those tools have documentation. And if you're in the if you're
Our
in
killer
the
use case. Oh, I can't believe you brought it up. Yeah,
I
let's go
know.
ahead and share this with everybody.
That's right. Yes, you can imagine that the tools evolve very quickly, and so too does their documentation. Well, we don't want to disrupt the flow of the boot camp by having people constantly re-up the tools that they're learning, and we also don't want to put the cognitive load on them to get the current documentation, every single time. And so what we can do is we can expose those resources as an MCP server so that they can integrate it into Claude or into Cursor, and then when they're asking questions of the tool they're using, they're getting up to, not necessarily up to date is the incorrect word, but they're getting the correct documentation version that they need for the version that we're running. And this is something that allows us to have control of that resource to make sure that it's up to date with exactly what they're running, as opposed to putting that cognitive load on the user. And I think that resource management for the LLM that we're able to do for the people that are consuming the tool is something that's just wasn't as possible before MCP.
Okay, all right. And just sort of to try to tie a little bow on this. So we're kind of building that MCP server for the cursor environments that our students will be using. Those agentic AI assisted development environments is what we're actually building an MCP server, and that's the client that's going to consume them is cursor. Okay, so then in the sort of next piece of our discussion here, hope you guys are appetized by this a little bit, and we can talk a little bit more about A2A. So, Wiz, we can look at the kind of general discussion here, very marketing-y. Hey, it complements MCP, great. Drawing on Google's expertise. We've seen this with them. They come out at the right time with the stuff that kind of is named and, and system diagrammed very, very nicely. Speaking of, this is their beautiful system diagram. And I want to just kind of walk through this with you, Wiz, and try to help everybody to understand. The first thing we can notice here is we've got a client agent and we've got a remote agent. So I think we're all familiar with the idea of the client agent now, okay? So why do we need a remote agent?
I mean, the basic idea is that you may not want to run or have to run the agent yourself, right? So you might not wish to literally spin up the agent every time you need it. More importantly, companies may want you to have access to an agent that they have deployed that you can interact with. That you don't have to go UV run, compose a bunch of different parts together, worry about versioning, worry about environment, yada yada, right? We want to be able to hit an agent like we would an API.
Okay, yeah. So it is kind of like this next layer of abstraction where we're sort of saying, okay, and I saw even today on OpenAI, on ChatGPT, they're like, hey, do you want to use the autonomous software engineer? And like this world where we actually have, the junior devs or ASWEs, these things are talking to each other. That's what this sort of client remote agent is indicating here.
Absolutely. Like the idea is, right? We want to express. So we have tools. Everyone loves tools. Gotta love tools, right? Well, but agents could be viewed as tools, right? We could think about an entire agent as a tool, but it's a little bit more complicated than just like an API call, right? And this is what A2A is helping us do. It's helping us express agents in a way that they can themselves consume, uh, in the same way like we talked about with MCP, where we have this idea of like a client server relationship, or a calling and called relationship for the agent.
That's right. That's right. So,
Yeah.
so one of the real interesting things, and you mentioned this earlier, is this capability discovery piece, which is where agents can actually advertise their capabilities using an agent card, almost like they have these digital business cards that they're kind of like trading with each other. Oh, hey, what do you do? What do you do? They're just out there networking with each other. And so this agent card actually allows the client to kind of identify the best agent for a particular task. So, what is it that people should sort of take away today about agent cards? I mean, a business card for agents, pretty straightforward, but it's kind of interesting now that, the other really interesting piece, and we're maybe going a little bit too deep down the rabbit hole here, but like it's in JSON format. And we've seen over the last couple of years, we've gotten really, really good at tool calling and function calling with these LLMs. And now this idea, we were discussing it on a recent event that we were doing with the guys over at RCAI on YouTube, where it's like maybe LLMs will get really, really good at calling MCP servers. Maybe they'll get really, really good at calling these, well, agent calling cards, I guess. And I guess this is sort of the future that we have to look forward to, whether we like it or not. It's kind of almost here. So again, there's a lot we could talk about, and that we will actually talk more about this week. Shout out to like and subscribe on YouTube. We're going to be covering agent to agent protocol in much more depth tomorrow for a whole hour. But for people that are looking for like a quick takeaway from A2A and from MCP, what's the difference? And then what's kind of the big takeaways for both AI engineers, and then maybe for other folks in the room that are not really AI engineers? What should they be taking away?
Yeah, I mean, I would think about it this way, right? MCP is like a storage cabinet, or like a utility belt filled
Exciting.
with cool things you can do, right? You can pull different things out of it, but it's not actually going to help you talk to other people, right? Like everyone's got their own utility belt, everyone's got their own way of doing things, but it's not facilitating, that communication. A2A is more like a pager for other agents, right? It's a shorthand you can use to kick off another agent task and then get this response back in some expected format. Uh,
Okay.
at the end of the day, remember, LLMs take as input text and they return as output text, right? So this is all very well scaffolded way for us to basically we're still talking about context, right? And we're still talking about this idea that we need the context of what this agent can do, how we can call it, so that we can then call it, and then it can return to us some context that we need. And A2A just helps facilitate that communication, as opposed to acting as like a storage cabinet or a utility belt.
Got it. Okay. All right. And then there are more protocols on the horizon. I've heard. We'll discuss a little bit about where all this is headed again tomorrow if you join us live on YouTube. So, I think one of the things I wanted to kind of go to is a little bit of Q&A time for the audience here. Again, you're not going to really use this as a client. Your agents are going to use this as a client. You're going to build servers. Those agents are going to communicate with business cards in the cloud. And this is really the sort of future we're moving to with agentic applications. A SWE from ChatGPT was announced today on mine personally, probably on many of yours too. Is MCP worth the hype? I mean, well, it's not exactly easier to build things today, especially if you're just building a single agent, you're just building a single RAG application. But maybe it is worth the hype if you're a business leader and you're really looking to sell AI investment in your firm. Like maybe it is a little bit of something where we're seeing the standards evolve. We're seeing those use cases where people are like, if I spend money today, will it be leverageable tomorrow? In many cases, when we can point to the standard that's being adopted across the industry, the answer might be yes. And this idea of the agent calling card, the agent card, this is going to be a really, really cool thing. I know that we did have at least one question from the audience, which is about the classic vulnerabilities and security issues. Could you talk a little bit about, and we talked about this in class a lot because this is one of the number one questions we get from students, is like, what are the drawbacks today from a security standpoint of using MCP servers in between the applications you're building and the agents that you're building?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a vulnerability because we have these semi-autonomous systems, which are vulnerable themselves to a number of attacks. Right? They are easy to convince to do things perhaps you don't wish them to do. Right? To anthropomorphize it a little bit, but these vulnerabilities can be exploited, and they can be exploited with relative ease in right now, especially if you're not doing a lot of due diligence and a lot of scaffolding to try and prevent these really, straightforward attacks. What does it mean for MCP? It means that the protocol just came out and it needs to mature. We need to figure out systems and scaffolds that help make it more secure. But at the end of the day, I mean, we have an autonomous system that, like people, can be convinced to do things we didn't necessarily ask them to do. And just like people are security vulnerabilities, right? Our LLM or autonomous agents will also be security vulnerabilities. So we can mitigate a lot, but I imagine the problem will stick with us for a very long time, just due to the fact that we want these systems to do stuff, by themselves. We really want that.
All right. Well, thanks for your expertise, Wiz. Are there any initiatives to build a security framework around MCP that you know of? Maybe any open source ones?
Tons, including the people working at MCP, or working on MCP. Sorry, I think it's there's no common agreed upon answer, but people are trying their very hardest to solve this problem. Yes.
Stay tuned. Yeah, stay tuned. All right. Thanks, Wiz. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'd like to take the last couple of minutes to introduce you, if you're still here, to AI Makerspace. You know, for 10 years as a university professor, I saw that the only people that were succeeding in a 21st century workforce were those that were learning new skills, using those new skills to build awesome things, and sharing the awesome things that they built with others. It wasn't degrees, it wasn't prestige, PhDs, or pedigrees. It was making stuff as part of a community. And at AI Makerspace, we're on a mission to create the world's leading community for people who want to build, ship, and share production LLM applications. Today, that means things like agents and MCP. Tomorrow, who knows? We've been doing this for many years at this point, too, properly at AI Makerspace. And our ethos of build, ship, share is something we live out every week. For instance, you can find us tomorrow on YouTube talking in much more depth and giving a bigger demo on the agent-to-agent protocol. You can check out the couple of MCP events if you'd like to go deeper we've done in recent weeks and months, or the one we did just last week with RCAI and one of the world's first Kaggle Forex grandmasters. That was kind of dope. My favorite quote from that one was, "It's kind of like an API for APIs. MCP, is it? It sounds good. I'm not sure." Join us this week on Thursday, too, for demo day of cohort 6 of our flagship, the AI Engineering Bootcamp. This is going to be a banger, everybody. Everybody's welcome. Please do come check it out. There's going to be 22 different teams presenting different projects with the latest and greatest in open source tooling from the LLM Edge. People like Marco, who had a PhD in mechanical engineering, who's been teaching for a long time in university, Love you, Marco. Thanks, brother. This is from like this last week. People just sharing about their experience in the cohort. People like Mo, who's really bought into the build, ship, share ethos and mentality. We look forward to seeing Mo around the Discord for a long time to come. And people like Geeta, who, man, I had so many messages exchanged with Geeta. If you're in Geeta's situation, I wouldn't necessarily even recommend you take our course unless you really want to get after it. Let's all try to encourage Geeta not to go back into hiding after her one post in many, many moons. And, shout out to folks like Nishanth, who's sending their team to us now to try to get folks upskilled at Visa. And, if we can be of use to you guys in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always updating our curriculum. We are cohort 7 of our 10-week offering. And we taught LLM ops and LLM engineering before that. Many of that kind of content is totally open source now, and you can find it for free. We've left behind a number of things, including Hugging Face Spaces. They've grown as a community, but necessarily some of their products haven't really kept up with some of the other emerging products like Vercel. The way we actually leverage inference endpoints in the course is now a little bit more matured to today in 2025, talking about code agents and coding agents and computer use agents. These are all table stakes today. If you'd rather learn for free, you can absolutely follow our self-study roadmap that's built out of our concepts and code that you'll find every week on YouTube. Follow us on Luma for the most recent and upcoming events. Join us on Discord if you love building, shipping, and sharing as much as we do. And I know Laura's in the room, and she's really trying to get to 11K this week. So give us a like and a follow on LinkedIn. Help us get there, guys. We're just grinding like all of you guys, and we hope this was super useful for you. Let us know if you have any questions. You can hit up me. You can hit up Wiz directly on LinkedIn or, of course, on Discord at Dr. Greg or at Chris the Wiz Alexiak. And that's a wrap. MCP and A2A. We hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you back for the next lightning lesson. Cheers, everybody. Have a good day. That's a wrap. And Jacob, you got it. Oh, what's up, Frank?
I'm ready to start coding, guys.
Yeah. Get after it. Get after it.
I'll let you guys go. Thanks.
Cheers, man. All right, we can shut it down. Jacob, whoever owns the room.